Good morning and happy Monday. I am Joey Haber from the Flying Tortoise Academy in Portland, Oregon. Welcome to my online series of Kung Fu Basics in my basement, where we go over Kung Fu fundamentals and listen to awesome audiobooks. Because what else are we gonna do these days? Today we're gonna do a whole bunch of work with hip and shoulder opening, as well as work with strengthening the general area around the hips and quad. So if you have any questions or comments, please post them in the appropriate areas. Be sure to like and subscribe. And if you have any requests for things to kind of delve into in the days, weeks, and months to come, let me know. I'll be sure to post it. Thank you all so much. Stay safe. Have a great day.
It's a brand new day. Soul 6, up and at 'em. Watney added his voice to a chorus of groans. Come on, Lewis prodded. No bitching. You got 40 minutes more sleep than you would have on Earth. Martinez was first out of his bunk. An Air Force man, he could match Lewis's Navy schedule with ease. Morning, Commander, he said crisply. Johansson sat up, but made no further move toward the harsh world outside her blankets. A career software engineer, mornings were never her forte. Vogel slowly lumbered from his bunk, checking his watch. He wordlessly pulled on his jumpsuit, smoothing out what wrinkles he could. He sighed inwardly at the grimy feeling of another day without a shower. Watney turned away, hugging a pillow to his head. Noisy people, go away, he mumbled. Beck, Martinez called out, shaking the mission's doctor. Rise and shine, bud. Yeah, okay, Beck said blearily. Johansson fell out of her bunk, then remained on the floor. Pulling the pillow from Watney's hands, Lewis said, straight? Let's move, Watney. Uncle Sam paid $100,000 for every second we'll be here. Bad woman take pillow, Watney groaned, unwilling to open his eyes. Back on Earth, I've tipped 200-pound men out of their bunks. Want to see what I can do in 0.4 G? No, not really, Watney said, sitting up. Having rousted the troops, Lewis sat at the comm station to check overnight messages from Houston. Watney shuffled to the ration cupboard and grabbed a breakfast at random. Hand me an eggs, will you? Martinez said. You can tell the difference? Watney said, passing Martinez a pack. Not really, Martinez said. Beck, what do you have? Watney continued. Don't care, Beck said. Give me whatever. Watney tossed a pack to him. Vogel, your usual sausages? Yeah, please, Vogel responded. You know you're a stereotype, right? I'm comfortable with that, Vogel replied, taking the proffered breakfast. Hey, Sunshine, Watney called to Johansson. Eating breakfast today? Johansson grunted. Pretty sure that's a no, Watney guessed. The crew ate in silence. Johansson eventually trudged to the ration cupboard and got a coffee packet. She clumsily added hot water, then sipped until wakefulness crept in. Mission updates from Houston, Lewis said. Satellites show a storm coming, but we can do surface ops before it gets here. Vogel, Martinez, you'll be with me outside. Johansson, you're stuck tracking weather reports. Watney, your soil experiments are bumped up to today. Beck, run the samples from yesterday's EVA through the spectrometer. Should you really go out with a storm on the way? Beck asked. Houston authorized it, Lewis said. Seems needlessly dangerous. Coming to Mars was needlessly dangerous, Lewis said. What's your point? Beck shrugged. Just be careful. Three figures looked eastward. Their bulky EVA suits rendered them nearly identical. Only the European Union flag on Vogel's shoulder distinguished him from Lewis and Martinez, who wore the stars and stripes. The darkness to the east undulated and flickered in the rays of the rising sun. The storm, Vogel said in his accented English. It is closer than Houston reported. We've got time, Lewis said. Focus on the task at hand. This EVA's all about chemical analysis. Vogel, you're the chemist, so you're in charge of what we dig up. Yeah, Vogel said. Please dig 30 centimeters and get soil samples. At least 100 grams each. Very important is 30 centimeters down. Will do, Lewis said. Stay within 100 meters of the hab, she added. Vogel said. Yes, ma'am, said Martinez. They split up. Greatly improved since the days of Apollo, Ares EVA suits allowed much more freedom of motion. Digging, bending over, and bagging samples were trivial tasks. After a time, Lewis asked, "How many samples do you need?" 7 each, perhaps? That's fine, Lewis confirmed. I've got 4 so far. 5 here, Martinez said. Of course, we can't expect the Navy to keep up with the Air Force, now can we? So that's how you want to play it? Lewis said. Just call him as I see him, Commander. Johansson here. The Cysop's voice came over the radio. Houston's upgraded the storm to severe. It's going to be here in 15 minutes. Back to base, Lewis said. The hab shook in the roaring wind as the astronauts huddled in the center. All 6 of them now wore their flight spacesuits in case they had to scramble for an emergency takeoff in the MAV. Johansson watched her laptop while the rest watched her. Sustained winds over 100 kilometers per hour now, she said, gusting to 125. Jesus, we're going to end up in Oz, Watney said. What's the abort wind speed? Technically 150 kilometers per hour, right. Martinez said.
Right here.
Any more than that, and the MAV is in danger of tipping. Any predictions on the storm track? Lewis asked. This is the edge of it, Johansson said, staring at her screen. It's going to get worse before it gets better. The hab canvas rippled under the brutal assault as the internal supports bent and shivered with each gust. The cacophony grew louder by the minute. All right, Lewis said. Prep for abort. We'll go to the MAV and hope for the best. If the wind gets too high, we'll launch. Leaving the hab in pairs, they grouped up outside airlock 1. The driving wind and sand battered them, but they were able to stay on their feet. Visibility is almost 0, Lewis said. If you get lost, home in on my suit's telemetry. The wind's going to be rougher away from the hab, so be ready. Pressing through the gale, they stumbled toward the MAV, with Lewis and Beck in the lead and Watney and Johansson bringing up the rear. Hey, Watney panted. Maybe we could shore up the MAV, make tipping less likely. How? Lewis huffed. We could use cables from the solar farm as guy lines. He wheezed for a few moments, then continued. The rovers could be anchors. The trick would be getting the line around the... Flying wreckage slammed Watney, carrying him off into the wind. Watney! Johansson exclaimed. What happened? Lewis said. Something hit him, Johansson reported. Watney, report, Lewis said. No reply. Watney, report, Lewis repeated. Again, she was met with silence. He's offline, Johansson reported. I don't know where he is. Commander, Beck said. Before we lost telemetry, his decompression alarm went off. Shit, Lewis exclaimed. Johansson, where did you last see him? He was right in front of me and then he was gone, she said. He flew off, due west. Okay, Lewis said. Martinez, get to the MAV and prep for launch. Everyone else, home in on Johansson. Dr. Beck, Vogel said as he stumbled through the storm. How long could a person survive decompression? Less than a minute, Beck said, emotion choking his voice. I can't see anything, Johansson said as the crew crowded around her. Line up and walk west, Lewis commanded. Small steps. He's probably prone. We don't want to step over him. Staying inside of one another, they trudged through the chaos. Martinez fell into the MAV airlock and forced it closed against the wind. Once it pressurized, he quickly doffed his suit. Having climbed the ladder to the crew compartment, he slid into the pilot's couch and booted the system. Grabbing the emergency launch checklist with one hand, he flicked switches rapidly with the other. One by one, the systems reported flight-ready status. As they came online, he noted one in particular. Commander, he radioed. The MAV's got a 7-degree tilt. It'll tip at 12.3. Copy that, Lewis said. Johansson, Beck said, looking at his ARM computer. Watney's biomonitor sent something before going offline. My computer just says bad packet. I have it too, Johansson said. It didn't finish transmitting. Some data's missing and there's no checksum. Give me a sec. Right. Commander, Martinez said. Message from Houston. We're officially scrubbed. The storm's definitely going to be too rough. Copy, Lewis said. They sent that 4.5 minutes ago, Martinez continued, while looking at satellite data from 9 minutes ago. Understood, Lewis said. Continue prepping for launch. Copy, Martinez said. Beck, Johansson said. I have the raw packet. It's plain text. BP 0, PR 0, TP 36.2. That's as far as it got. Copy, Beck said morosely. Blood pressure 0, pulse rate 0. Temperature normal. The channel fell silent for some time. They continued pressing forward, shuffling through the sandstorm, hoping for a miracle. Temperature normal? Lewis said, a hint of hope in her voice. It takes a while for the... Beck stammered. It takes a while to cool. Commander, Martinez said. Tilting at 10.5 degrees now with gusts pushing it to 11. Copy, Lewis said. Are you at pilot release? Affirmative, Martinez replied. I can launch any time. If it tips, can you launch before it falls completely over? Martinez said, not expecting the question. Yes, ma'am. I'd take manual control and go full throttle. Then I'd nose up and return to pre-programmed descent. Copy that, Lewis said. Everyone home in on Martinez's suit. That'll get you to the MAV airlock. Get in and prep for launch. What about you, Commander? Beck asked. I'm searching a little more. Get moving. And Martinez, if you start to tip, launch. You really think I'll leave you behind? Martinez said. I just ordered you to, Lewis replied. You three, get to the ship. They reluctantly obeyed Lewis's order and made their way toward the MAV. The punishing wind fought them every step of the way. Unable to see the ground, Lewis shuffled forward. Remembering something, she reached to her back and got a pair of rock drill bits. She had added the 1-meter bits to her equipment that morning, anticipating geological sampling later in the day. Holding one in each hand, she dragged them along the ground as she walked. After 20 meters, she turned around and walked the opposite direction. Walking a straight line proved to be impossible. Not only did she lack visual references, the endless wind pushed her off course. The sheer volume of attacking sand buried her feet with each step. Grunting, she pressed on.
Cats.
Beck, Johansson, and Vogel squeezed into the MAV airlock. Designed for 2, it could be used by 3 in emergencies. As it equalized, Lewis's voice came over the radio. Johansson, she said, would the rover IR camera do any good? Negative, Johansson replied. IR can't get through sand any better than visible light. What's she thinking? Beck asked after removing his helmet. She's a geologist. She knows IR can't get through a sandstorm. She is grasping, Vogel said, opening the inner door. We must get to the couches. Please hurry. I don't feel good about this, Beck said. Neither do I, Doctor, said Vogel, climbing the ladder. But the commander has given us orders. Insubordination will not help. Commander, Martinez radioed. We're tilting 11.6 degrees. One good gust and we're tipping. What about the proximity radar? Lewis said. Could it detect Watney's suit? No way, Martinez said. It's made to see Hermes in orbit, not the metal in a single spacesuit. Give it a try, Lewis said. Commander, said Beck, putting on a headset as he slid into his acceleration couch. I know you don't want to hear this, but Watney... Mark's dead. Copy, Lewis said. Martinez, try the radar. Roger, Martinez radioed. He brought the radar online and waited for it to complete a self-check. Glaring at Beck, he said, What's the matter with you? My friend just died, Beck answered, and I don't want my commander to die too. Martinez gave him a stern look. Turning his attention back to the radar, he radioed. Negative contact on proximity radar. Nothing? Lewis asked. You can barely see the hab, he replied. The sandstorm's fucking things up. Even if it wasn't, there's not enough metal. Shit! Strap in, he yelled to the crew. We're tipping! The MAV creaked as it tilted faster and faster. 13 degrees, Johansson called out from her couch. Buckling his restraints, Vogel said, We are far past balance. We will not rock back. We can't leave her, Beck yelled. Let it tip, we'll fix it. 32 metric tons including fuel, Martinez said, his hands flying over the controls. If it hits the ground, it'll do structural damage to the tanks, frame, and probably the second stage engine. We'd never be able to fix it. You can't abandon her, Beck said. You can't. I've got one trick. If that doesn't work, I'm following her orders. Bringing the orbital maneuvering system online, he fired a sustained burn from the nose cone array. The small thrusters fought against the lumbering mass of the slowly tilting spacecraft. You're firing the OMS? Vogel asked. I don't know if it'll work. We're not tipping very fast, Martinez said. I think he's slowing down. The aerodynamic caps will have automatically ejected, Vogel said. It will be a bumpy ascent with 3 holes in the side of the ship. Thanks for the tip, Martinez said, maintaining the burn and watching the tilt readout. Come on. Still 13 degrees, Johansson reported. What's going on up there? Lewis radioed. You went quiet. Respond. Stand by, Martinez replied. 12.9 degrees, Johansson said. It is working, Vogel said. For now, Martinez said. I don't know if maneuvering fuel will last. 12.8 now, Johansson supplied. OMS fuel at 60%, Beck said. How much do you need to dock with Hermes? 10% if I don't fuck anything up, Martinez said, adjusting the thrust angle. 12.6, Johansson said. We're tipping back. Or the wind died down a little, Beck postulated. Fuel at 45%. There is danger of damage to the vents, Vogel cautioned. The OMS was not made for prolonged thrusts. I know, Martinez said. I can dock without nose vents if I have to. Almost there, Johansson said. Okay, we're under 12.3. OMS cut off, Martinez announced, terminating the burn. Still tipping back, Johansson said. 11.6. 11.5. Holding at 11.5. OMS fuel at 22%, Beck said. Yeah, I see that, Martinez replied. It'll be enough. Commander, Beck radioed. You need to get to the ship now. Agreed, Martinez radioed. He's gone, ma'am. Watney's gone. The four crewmates awaited their commander's response. Copy, she finally replied. On my way.
External rotation.
They lay in silence, strapped to their
Roll.
couches and ready for launch.
Roll.
Beck looked at Watney's empty couch and saw Vogel doing the same. Martinez ran a self-check on the nose cone OMS thrusters. They were no longer safe for use. He noted the malfunction in his log. The airlock cycled. After removing her suit, Lewis made her way to the flight cabin. She wordlessly strapped into her couch, her face a frozen mask. Only Martinez dared speak. Still at pilot release, he said quietly. Ready for launch? Lewis closed her eyes and nodded. I'm sorry, Commander, Martinez said. You need to verbally launch, she said. Yes, ma'am, he replied, activating the sequence. The retaining clamps ejected from the launch gantry, falling to the ground. Seconds later, pre-ignition pyros fired, igniting the main engines, and the MAV lurched upward. The ship slowly gained speed. As it did, wind shear blew it laterally off course. Sensing the problem, the ascent software angled the ship into the wind to counteract it. As fuel was consumed, the ship got lighter and the acceleration more pronounced. Rising at this exponential rate, the craft quickly reached maximum acceleration, a limit defined not by the ship's power, but by the delicate human bodies inside. As the ship soared, the open OMS ports took their toll. The crew rocked in their couches as the craft shook violently. Martinez and the ascent software kept it trim, though it was a constant battle. The turbulence tapered off and eventually fell to nothing as the atmosphere became thinner and thinner. Suddenly, all force stopped. The first stage had been completed. The crew experienced weightlessness for several seconds, then were pressed back into their couches as the next stage began. Outside, the now empty first stage fell away, eventually to crash on some unknown area of the planet below. The second stage pushed the ship ever higher and into low orbit. Lasting less time than the massive first stage and thrusting much more smoothly, it seemed almost like an afterthought. Abruptly, the engine stopped, and an oppressive calm replaced the previous cacophony. Main engine shut down, Martinez said. Ascent time, 8 minutes, 14 seconds. On course for Hermes intercept. Normally, an incident-free launch would be cause for celebration. This one earned only silence, broken by Johansson's gentle sobbing. 4 months later, Beck tried not to think about the painful reason he was doing zero-G plant growth experiments. He noted the size and shape of the fern leaves, took photos, and made notes. Having completed his science schedule for the day, he checked his watch. Perfect timing. The data dump would be completing soon. He floated past the reactor to the semicone A ladder. Traveling feet first along the ladder, He soon had to grip it in earnest as the centripetal force of the rotating ship took hold. By the time he reached semicone A, he was at 0.4 G. No mere luxury, the centripetal gravity of Hermes kept them fit. Without it, they would have spent their first week on Mars barely able to walk. 0G exercise regimens could keep the heart and bones healthy, but none had been devised that would give them full function from Sol 1. Because the ship was already designed for it, they used the system on the return trip as well.
50 circles?
Johansson sat at her station. Lewis sat in the adjacent seat while Vogel and Martinez hovered nearby. The data dump carried emails and videos from home. It was the high point of the day. "Is it here yet?" Beck asked as he entered the bridge. "Almost," Johansson said. 98%. "You're looking cheerful, Martinez," Beck said. "My son turned 3 yesterday," he beamed. "Should be some pics of the party. How about you?" "Nothing special," Beck said. "Peer reviews of a paper I wrote a few years back."
All right.
"Complete," Johansson said. "All the personal emails are dispatched to your laptops. Also, there's a telemetry update for Vogel and a system update for me." "Huh. There's a voice message addressed to the whole crew." She looked over her shoulder to Lewis. Lewis shrugged. "Play it." Johansson opened the message, then sat back. "Hermes, this is Mitch Henderson," the message began. "Henderson?" Martinez said, puzzled. "Talking directly to us without Capcom?" Lewis held her hand up to signal for silence. "I have some news," Mitch's voice continued. "There's no subtle way to put this. Mark Watney's still alive." Johansson gasped.
All right.
"Whoa." Beck stammered. Vogel stood with his mouth agape as a shocked expression swept across his face. Martinez looked to Lewis. She leaned forward and pinched her chin. "I know that's a surprise," Mitch continued, "and I know you'll have a lot of questions. We're going to answer those questions, but for now I'll just give you the basics. He's alive and healthy. We found out 2 months ago and decided not to tell you. We even censored personal messages. I was strongly against all that. We're telling you now because we finally have communication with him and a viable rescue plan. It boils down to Ares 4 picking him up with a modified MDV. We'll get you a full write-up of what happened, but it's definitely not your fault. Mark stresses that every time it comes up. It was just bad luck. Take some time to absorb this. Your science schedules are cleared for tomorrow. Send all the questions you want and we'll answer them. Henderson out." The message's end brought stunned silence to the bridge. He's alive," Martinez said, then smiled. Vogel nodded excitedly. "He lives." Johansson stared at her screen in wide-eyed disbelief. "Holy shit," Beck laughed. "Holy shit, Commander! He's alive!" "I left him behind," Lewis said quietly. The celebrations ceased immediately as the crew saw their commander's expression. "But," Beck began, "we all left together." "You followed orders," Lewis interrupted. "I left him behind. In a barren, unreachable, God-forsaken wasteland." Beck looked to Martinez pleadingly. Martinez opened his mouth, but could find no words to say. Lewis trudged off the bridge. Chapter 13. The employees of Deo Plastics worked double shifts to finish the HAB canvas for Ares 3. There was talk of triple shifts if NASA increased the order again. No one minded. The overtime pay was spectacular, and the funding was limitless. Woven carbon thread ran slowly through the press, which sandwiched it between polymer sheets. The completed material was folded 4 times and glued together. The resulting thick sheet was then coated with soft resin and taken to the hot room to set. Log entry, Sol 114. Now that NASA can talk to me, they won't shut the hell up. They want constant updates on every HAB system, and they've got a room full of people trying to micromanage my crops. It's awesome to have a bunch of dipshits on Earth telling me, a botanist, how to grow plants. I mostly ignore them. I don't want to come off as arrogant here, but I'm the best botanist on the planet. One big bonus, email. Just like the days back on Hermes, I get data dumps. Of course, they relay email from friends and family. But NASA also sends along choice messages from the public. I've got an email from rock stars, athletes, actors and actresses, and even the president. One of them was from my alma mater, the University of Chicago. They say once you grow crops somewhere, you have officially colonized it. So technically, I colonized Mars. In your face, Neil Armstrong. But my favorite email was the one from my mother. It's exactly what you'd expect. Thank God you're alive, stay strong, don't die, your father says hello, etc. I read it 50 times in a row. Hey, don't get me wrong, I'm not a mama's boy or anything. I'm a full-grown man who only occasionally wears diapers. You have to in an EVA suit. It's totally manly and normal for me to cling to a letter from my mom. It's not like I'm some homesick kid at camp, right? Admittedly, I have to schlep to the rover 5 times a day to check email. They can get a message from Earth to Mars, but they can't get it another 10 meters to the hab. But hey, I can't bitch. My odds of living through this are way higher now. Last I'd heard, they'd solved the weight problem on Ares 4's MDV. Once it lands here, they'll ditch the heat shield, all the life support stuff, and a bunch of empty fuel tanks. Then they can take the 7 of us, Ares 4's crew plus me, all the way to Schiaparelli. They're already working on my duties for the surface ops. How cool is that? In other news, I'm learning Morse code. Why? Because it's our backup communications system. NASA figured a decades-old probe isn't ideal as the sole means of communication. If Pathfinder craps out, I'll spell messages with rocks, which NASA will see with satellites. They can't reply, but at least we'd have one-way communication. Why Morse code? Because making dots and dashes with rocks is a lot easier than making letters. It's a shitty way to communicate. Hopefully it won't come up. All chemical reactions complete. The sheet was sterilized and moved to a clean room. There, a worker cut a strip off the edge, divided it into squares, and put each through a series of rigorous tests. Having passed inspection, the sheet was then cut to shape. The edges were folded over, sewn, and resealed with resin. A man with a clipboard made final inspections, independently verifying the measurements, then approved it for use. Log entry, Sol 115. The meddling botanists have grudgingly admitted I did a good job. They agree I'll have enough food to last until Sol 900. Bearing that in mind, NASA has fleshed out the mission details of the supply probe. At first, they were working on a desperate plan to get a probe here before Sol 400, but I bought another 500 sols of life with my potato farm, so they have more time to work on it. They'll launch next year during the Hohmann transfer window.
Okay, next up, we're working opening the Kwa and the Dong. Kwa is the inguinal groove, Dong is the back of the leg. These next exercises get a little knee intensive. If your knees start to get sore, go to a higher stance. If that doesn't alleviate the soreness, stop immediately. It's better to not get hurt today and be able to train tomorrow. All right, game on.
And it'll take almost 9 months to get here. It should arrive around Sol 856. It'll have plenty of food, a spare oxygenator, water reclaimer, and comm system. 3 comm systems, actually. I guess they aren't taking any chances, what with my habit of being nearby when radios break. Got my first email from Hermes today. NASA's been limiting direct contact. I guess they're afraid I'll say something like, "You abandoned me on Mars, you assholes!" I know the crew was surprised to hear from the ghost of Mars missions past, but come on. I wish NASA was less of a nanny sometimes. Anyway, they finally let one email through from the commander. Watney, obviously we're very happy to hear you survived. As the person responsible for your situation, I wish there was more I could do to directly help, but it looks like NASA has a good rescue plan. I'm sure you'll continue to show your incredible resourcefulness and get through this. Looking forward to buying you a beer back on Earth. Lewis. My reply. Commander, pure bad luck is responsible for my situation, not you. You made the right call and saved everyone else. I know it must have been a tough decision, but any analysis of that day will show it was the right one. Get everyone else home, and I'll be happy. I will take you up on that beer, though. Watney. The employees carefully folded the sheet and placed it in an argon-filled, airtight shipping container. The man with the clipboard placed a sticker on the package. Project Ares 3, HAD canvas, sheet AL-102. The package was placed on a charter plane and flown to Edwards Air Force Base in California. It flew abnormally high at great cost of fuel to ensure a smoother flight.
Check that out.
Upon arrival, the package was carefully transported by special convoy to Pasadena. Once there, it was moved to the JPL spacecraft assembly facility. Over the next 5 weeks, engineers in white bodysuits assembled pre-supply 309. It contained AL-102, as well as 12 other HAB canvas packages. Log entry, Sol 116. It's almost time for the second harvest. Yep. I wish I had a straw hat and some suspenders. My reseed of the potatoes went well. I'm beginning to see that crops on Mars are extremely prolific, thanks to the billions of dollars worth of life support equipment around me. I now have 400 healthy potato plants, each one making lots of calorie-filled taters for my dining enjoyment. In just 10 days, they'll be ripe. And this time I'm not replanting them as seed. This is my food supply, all natural, organic, Martian-grown potatoes. Don't hear that every day, do you? You may be wondering how I'll store them. I can't just pile them up. Most of them would go bad before I got around to eating them. So instead, I'll do something that wouldn't work at all on Earth. Throw them outside. Most of the water will be sucked out by the near vacuum. What's left will freeze solid. Any bacteria planning to rot my taters will die screaming. In other news, I got an email from Venkat Kapoor. Mark, some answers to your earlier questions. No, we will not tell our botany team to go fuck themselves. I understand you've been on your own for a long time, but we're in the loop now, and it's best if you listen to what we have to say. The Cubs finished the season at the bottom of the NL Central. The data transfer rate just isn't good enough for the size of music files, even in compressed formats. So your request for anything, oh God, anything but disco is denied. Enjoy your boogie fever. Also, an uncomfortable side note. NASA is putting together a committee. They want to see if there were any avoidable mistakes that led you to being stranded. Just a heads up. They may have questions for you later on. Keep us posted on your activities. Kapoor. My reply. Venkat, tell the investigation committee they'll have to do their witch hunt without me. And when they inevitably blame Commander Lewis, be advised I'll publicly refute it. I'm sure the rest of the crew will do the same. Also, please tell them that each and every one of their mothers is a prostitute. Watney. P.S. They're sisters, too. The pre-supply probes for Ares 3 launched on 14 consecutive days during the Hohmann transfer window. Pre-supply 309 was launched third. The 251-day trip to Mars was uneventful, needing only 2 minor course adjustments. After several aerobraking maneuvers to slow down, it made its final descent toward Acidalia Planitia. First, it endured re-entry via a heat shield. Later, it released a parachute and detached the now expended shield. Once its onboard radar detected it was 30 meters from the ground, it cut loose the parachute and inflated balloons all around its hull. It fell unceremoniously to the surface, bouncing and rolling until it finally came to rest. Deflating its balloons, the onboard computer reported the successful landing back to Earth. Then it waited 23 months. Log entry, Sol 117. The water reclaimer is acting up. 6 people will go through 18 liters of water per day, so it's made to process 20. But lately it hasn't been keeping up. It's doing 10, tops. Do I generate 10 liters of water per day? No, I'm not the urinating champion of all time. It's the crops. The humidity inside the hab is a lot higher than it was designed for, so the water reclaimer is constantly filtering it out of the air. I'm not worried about it. If need be, I can piss directly onto the plants. The plants will take their share of water, and the rest will condense on the walls. I could make something to collect the condensation, I'm sure. Thing is, the water can't go anywhere. It's a closed system. Okay, technically I'm lying. The plants aren't entirely water neutral. They strip the hydrogen from some of it, releasing the oxygen, and use it to make the complex hydrocarbons that are the plant itself. But it's a very small loss, and I made like 600 liters of water from MDV fuel. I could take baths and still have plenty left over. NASA, however, is absolutely shitting itself. They see the water reclaimer as a critical survival element. There's no backup, and they think I'll die instantly without it. To them, equipment failure is terrifying. To me, it's Tuesday. So instead of preparing for my harvest, I have to make extra trips to and from the rover to answer their questions. Each new message instructs me to try some new solution and report the results back. So far as we've worked out, it's not the electronics, refrigeration system, instrumentation, or temperature.
And let's finish the wall.
I'm sure it'll turn out to be a little hole somewhere. Then NASA will have 4 hours of meetings before telling me to cover it with duct tape. Lewis and Beck opened pre-supply 309. Working as best they could in their bulky EVA suits, they removed the various portions of HAB canvas and laid them on the ground. 3 entire pre-supply probes were dedicated to the HAB. Following a procedure they had practiced hundreds of times, they efficiently assembled the pieces. Special seal strips between the patches ensured airtight mating. After erecting the main structure of the HAB, they assembled the 3 airlocks. Sheet AL-102 had a hole perfectly sized for airlock 1. Beck stretched the sheet tight to the seal strips on the airlock's exterior. Once all airlocks were in place, Lewis flooded the HAB with air, and AL-102 felt pressure for the first time. Lewis and Beck waited an hour. No pressure was lost. The setup had been perfect. Log entry, Sol 118. My conversation with NASA about the water reclaimer was boring and riddled with technical details, so I'll paraphrase it for you. Me. This is obviously a clog. How about I take it apart and check the internal tubing? NASA. After 5 hours of deliberation. No, you'll fuck it up and die. So I took it apart. Yeah, I know NASA has a lot of ultra-smart people, and I should really do what they say. And I'm being too adversarial, considering they spend all day working on how to save my life. I just get sick of being told how to wipe my ass. Independence was one of the qualities they looked for when choosing Ares astronauts. It's a 13-month mission, most of it spent many light minutes away from Earth. They wanted people who would act on their own initiative. If Commander Lewis were here, I'd do whatever she said, no problem. But a committee of faceless bureaucrats back on Earth? Sorry, I'm just having...
All right, everyone, that's the time we have for today. Please leave questions, comments, and requests in the comment area below. Be sure to like and subscribe, and I'll post more tomorrow. Stay safe.